guys, welcome to Baking and Books. My name is Lexi and I'm an amateur baker who loves to read. So each week I post videos of myself attempting to bake something new while also talking about a book that I have recently read or just really love. This week I'm going to be trying a pumpkin bread and it sounds delicious and I'm super excited. We're also going to be talking about the third book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series, The Library of Souls. This was a fun book, definitely a mid book. I'll get into what I mean by that later, but it's a really good one and I still really enjoyed it. So I'm excited to talk to you guys more about that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so if you have not yet read the other two Miss Peregrine books, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and Hollow City, I would recommend doing that first, or at the very least, I guess you could go and watch my videos on that instead, just so that you're not super behind. So we left off with the kids had thought that they had been rescued or that they'd rescued Miss Peregrine and they found Miss Wren, and then they find out that actually they were being set up and captured by whites and like the hollow ghast and things like that. But Emma and Addison and Jacob managed to escape, and at the very last minute, Jacob sort of realizes that he has control over this hollow that was hunting them. And that kind of is where it leaves off. So we pick up this book pretty much right at that spot. And so now Jacob is sort of discovering, like, he has these new powers that he had no idea that he had, which would maybe be the ability to control hollows. And of course, they're still on the hunt to find and rescue their friends, because now they've gotten separated not only from wherever Miss Peregrine is being held, but from their friends as well. So he and Emma and Addison kind of have to go off on this journey to hunt everybody down and see if they can save everybody. So that is pretty much it as far as the synopsis is concerned, just because if you haven't read the book, I don't want to give too much away. I mean, it is part of a series, so, you know, sometimes if you start talking too much about stuff, you give away things that could have been interesting in the books, and then you'll all get mad at me, so I don't want that. If you haven't read this book, or you haven't read the other books, and you don't want things spoiled for you, then go ahead and skip forward until it says no more spoilers, because then you can see how the pumpkin bread turned out without having anything ruined for you. Otherwise, just stay with me, and we're gonna get back to it. Look, I feel like I spend a lot of time complaining about Emma in Hollow City, but I'm back on my bullshit for this book too. I just think, to me, she's just too much. Like, I don't know. I feel like she's not really that supportive of Jacob. Like, I think she maybe thinks she's being supportive, but she's not, because he doesn't have any confidence, and she's constantly like, oh, you'll be fine, you can do it, in these really life-threatening situations. And I think, too, like, she's very privileged because, you know, I mean, while the way that they have to grow up, you know, hidden away in loops and stuff, like, that's obviously awful, and it sucks that they can't just, like, be out in the real world and be themselves, you know, and grow old and do all these normal things. But at the same time, like, she's had a very cushy experience when it comes to that. Like, if you were to take other peculiars, like, she's had a very privileged life compared to them. And I think my issue with Emma is that she forgets that a lot, or doesn't recognize it, I guess. Like, I don't think she always recognizes quite how lucky and privileged she is to have had Miss Peregrine and to have grown up the way that she did. And so my frustrations with Emma, just, like, because of this privileged attitude and because of, like, when they find the other children, like, locked up and being sold for their peculiar abilities, you know, she's like, why wouldn't they want out, and why wouldn't they want to do this, and this is ridiculous. And it's like, well, because they're on the street, they're homeless, and they could become drug addicts, you know. But at least here, while it's degrading and frustrating, at least they're semi-taken care of, and that's just something she doesn't understand. I also think she always acts on impulse. Like, she doesn't think things through. And to me, like, it frustrates me that she's often seen as a leader by the other children, because I personally think acting on impulse is a really bad trait for a leader. Like, sometimes it's good to be like, you know what, this is what I feel in my gut, and this is what we're going with, we're taking a risk. But she does it every time a decision has to be made. It just drives me nuts. I don't know. She's not a very good character. Like, I just don't like her. I do think, though, that the concept of the Panopticon, oh god, whatever it is really cool, though, because, like, it would be really neat to be able to travel between different worlds and to be able to, you know, go to different peculiar places and maybe learn and travel and do all of these really neat things that, you know, right now they're not able to do. Also, like, I find myself suspicious of everybody in this series. Everybody new that we meet, I just find it to be suspicious. I feel like we just can't trust anybody, and there is no point in us trying to trust anybody. I'm making a huge mess with this flower, and it's just because the bag, like, refused to open the last time that I used it, and I was opening it for the first time. So now it's all, like, torn, and I had to, like, duct tape it closed, and so now we're having just a real issue over here. So just try not to judge me. I'm doing the best I can. Honestly, like, I know that the hollows are kind of the bad guys. I mean, they are the bad guys, but they're not really the bad guys. They're the monsters, which in my opinion is different because it's not their fault that they're, you know, that they don't really have a mind of their own anymore, like, if that makes sense. Like, obviously it's their own fault that they got mixed up in all of that. This is a nightmare. That they got mixed up in all of that to begin with. But then, like, at the same time, now they are just sort of mindless creatures who don't have a lot of control over anything. So I do feel bad for them, and I feel like very quickly, Jacob's hollow that he's working with and that keeps, like, following him is easily my favorite character. I love the idea of this really horrific monster just becoming a pet. And I think it's absolutely adorable, and I love that. And I feel sad for the hollow, you know? So it's like, when he gets trapped because he has to be used in the Pantalupticon or whatever, like, I feel bad for the hollow. I just want it to have a better life. It doesn't deserve this. I mean, it might, but it doesn't. It's not its fault. I also get sort of annoyed because in the last book, you know, Miss Wren was all, oh, you can't fight. Like, I'm really proud of you for finding me and good job and everything, but, like, once we have Miss Peregrine back, you guys are just going to have to go home and be somewhere safe because you're kids and you can't fight. And you can review my last video for why that annoyed me. But now that Jacob and Emma have tracked down all the kids and Imbrins, I don't know. Now that they've tracked them all down, now it's okay for them to fight because now they're gonna have to fight to get out. And now they're all, like, old and sick, so now they're okay with the kids fighting. And I'm like, really? Now you're okay with the kids fighting? Yeah, when they're rescuing you? I mean, I'll agree with the bad guys on one thing. The Imbrins are a little bit high and mighty. I find it interesting, though, that sometimes, like, Jacob is a really well-written character and he's really interesting and he makes a lot of interesting choices. And then other times he makes, like, some really dumb decisions. Like, when they're outside and all of the whites have gone into that little bunker thing and they go in and then they can't hear them or see them or anything and they're like, there's just a bunch of birds in there. And Jacob's like, oh my gosh, it must be the trapped Imbrines. And it's like, he doesn't run that by anybody else. Like, he doesn't think to himself, like, okay, let me ask if all of the other Imbrines are here. Or let me ask if we're missing anybody or where they could have possibly gone. He just goes on instinct, and that's how he gets half those hollows killed that he was using. I think this is just about ready. So I just think Jacob could have done a better job. Like, come on, Jacob. I do think that Bentham, is that how you pronounce it, I guess? I do think he's kind of a poorly written character. He just keeps changing sides to whatever best fits his interest. And while I understand that, like, that is real and there are people out there like that, I find it to be very boring in the book. Like, either be the bad guy or don't. And then even at the last minute, like, he still is out here changing his mind and being like, you know what, you're right. My brother was never gonna give me what I wanted, and he's a turd, and I should have listened to you the whole time, Alma. And it's just like, honestly, my dude, pick a lane. Like, it kind of annoys me when, I just think those are very poorly written characters. I just think you should be able to pick a side and stay there. I think Jacob's parents also really get to me because it's like, I can understand why they were so, for lack of a better word, like, crazy and sort of harassed feeling when he was missing, or like when they first got him back, because he really just disappeared without any explanation. No big deal. And they're like, well, it was a big deal to me. So I can understand that, but I have issue with the fact that they don't just let him believe whatever he wants to believe. Like, when they find Emma's letters and they're like, oh my gosh, he still believes she's real. And they have this whole big fit over it. And it's like, I understand you're concerned about his sanity and this and that. However, just let him believe whatever he wants to believe. If he's being a good kid, he's being a good son, he's, doing all the things you want him to do, why does it matter if he has imaginary friends? I get it, he's 16, you want him to, get over that, you're afraid he's gonna backtrack or backslide or whatever. But I just think the way that they treat him is very, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, you can tell they're not very, involved in caring parents, which we saw in the first book, because I just feel like more parents, before they would be like, oh, we're going to send you to a mental institution because we found that you have an imaginary friend, they would, they would do more. I feel like Jacob's parents go from 0 to 60 really quickly, and I'm not going to say it's unbelievable because I know there are people out there like that, but for me, that is bad parenting. You can't just go from 0 to 60. You need to talk with your kid and listen to your kid, and, instead of just pushing them away and being like, this is embarrassing or this is hard to deal with, it's like, well, that's what you signed up for when you had a kid, was sometimes things are hard. Get over it. Okay, if you left because of spoilers, go ahead and come back and join us. Our pumpkin bread went in the oven, came out, and it is done and super cute. I do have 2 loaves, but the other loaf took a little bit longer, so it's still cooling. So now we're going to cut into it and see how we did. It's got a very nice color, so I'm glad about that. Here we go. It looks really nice. Let me show you. So there's our inside. I don't know if the camera will focus well enough, but it looks nice. It smells nice. It's good. It's a success. I think this is definitely a success. First of all, let me show you the top. It came out looking very attractive and bread-like. So I'm happy with that. It's got good taste and all the good technical terms, like it baked properly. It wasn't underbaked or overbaked or anything like that. Not that I'm an expert, but in my personal opinion, it was delicious. So I would definitely say this was a huge success. If you have any other recipes that you want me to try, throw those my way. I would love to have them. I do highly recommend this book. And I guess what I meant by it's a mid-book earlier is that this is probably going to be a shorter video. There wasn't quite as much to talk about with this book. And I think sometimes that happens when you're in a series, is you have a book that's a lot of adventure, it's a lot of getting things done. It's not a lot of information or interesting things to talk about. It's just a lot of and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this is where we ended up. It progresses the story more than it actually makes a dent on how you feel about the story or the characters. Not that this isn't a good book. I mean, if you're already in the series, it's a great next step. It's a really good adventure story. Introduces you to a lot of new interesting characters. You get a big fight scene in this. So it's a lot of fun, especially watching Jacob explore a new gift that he has. So I definitely recommend this book if you're already in the series. Don't give up on the series just because this book may not be quite as intellectually interesting as maybe the other ones are. It's still a really good book, but there just wasn't as much to talk about, so it didn't take me as long to get through it. If you have any other book recommendations, I would love to have those. You can always follow me on Instagram to see what I'm currently reading. And of course you can follow me on all social media. If you had a good time today, please like and subscribe. I try to be here for you every week, and it's always a little bit of a hot mess and a little bit of fun. Today was more fun than hot mess. It was a good day for me, but that's not always the case, although I did get pretty messy, so maybe that's the hot mess part. Thank you to those of you that watch every week. You guys are the absolute best, and I will see you next time.